Fred McMurray, and we're back with Steve Liberty Jr. of Harbor Freight Transport. Today, we're talking about the ways to protect your cargo when you're shipping internationally. Could run into hurricanes, could run into icebergs, pirates. Those are the big ones that come into my mind, but there's probably about 90 other ways you need to protect your cargo from harm when shipping. Steve, you're the expert. Instead of me just opening my mouth, let's hear what you got to say. How do you protect your cargo from the rigors of international shipping?
Sure. Hi, Fred. Good to see you again this week. Um, I mean, what a lot of shippers don't realize is that most of the time they're only protecting and packaging their cargo for a domestic shipment, right? They're not aware that the cargo may be co-loaded with other freight in a container if it's being consolidated, or if it's going to need to be strapped down to a flat rack with strapping that's going to pull very heavily from the top down. They may not also be aware that it might be exposed to weather, right? Could be, if it's on the flat rack, could be it's going to be outside. So rain, snow, and sometimes even in a container, if something is moving from the north, below the equator south or vice versa, you have a lot of temperature swings, right? When it's summer up here, it's winter down in South America. So you have these wild temperature swings that could cause maybe some condensation in the container. So what we find is that shippers should really consult companies like us that provide export packaging services, and we guide them with making sure that their crates are made well to withstand multiple handlings, right? Both domestically and in loading of a container, unloading of container, and maybe final delivery to a destination. And we help guide them to protect against weather and any long-term or short-term storage requirements that they may have.
All right, so you hit 3 points in there, and where my brain went, huh? And one of them is, so when things get shipped, the shipper isn't necessarily looking at, well, where to put it. You said flat rack. It could be out on open deck if it's flat rack. So how do I know if I'm shipping it, what I have to plan for, I guess is where I'm going at it. I understand that if I'm shipping bananas from Ecuador, which I think they used to do bananas from Ecuador,
Sure.
um, that's actually international shipping. So maybe if you could break it down along types of cargo.
Sure. Sure. So I mean, so some of the export crating, most of the export crating we do is machinery, right? It's
Okay.
could be capital equipment, could be pharmaceutical equipment, water filtration equipment. We work with shippers that are moving cargo to a lot of manufacturing facilities overseas. So right now we are in the process of creating a lot of cargo for a water filtration plant being put up in Sweden. So we worked with that shipper on determining the proper way to export crate. The first thing is we have to make sure all wood has to be stamped with an ISPM 15 stamp. That's a certification mark on wood packaging to indicate that the wood has been treated most of the time with heat to prevent the spread of pests and diseases. So companies like us are enrolled in the service. We are checked on monthly by a government agency that makes sure that we're buying wood that is heat treated correctly, and we're only using that heat treated wood for export, and that's to prevent the lanternfly, right, and things like that from infiltrating other countries. And then we worked with them on determining the type of crating. They told us that their cargo would be stored outside for at least 1 year, maybe more. So some of the things they were worried about was water, right? So then we had to come up with ways to protect their bare metal on their cargo and the machinery from getting wet for 1 year. So we came up with several options for them. One was we were going to use VCI, which is a corrosion inhibitor that protects metal from corrosion. So a lot of their bare metal, they didn't want it to rust. So corrosion inhibitors can decrease the corrosion rate of bare metal. And they come in various forms, right? They wanted a mixture of spray-on oil on the bare metal, and then they wanted their cargo heat wrapped. So we heat wrapped it with a marine plastic wrap that's also coated with VCI. And that's like what you see on a boat. If you've seen a boat with this white plastic film on it and it's shrunk really tight around it, it's exactly the same thing, only we use heat wrap that is coated with the VCI material to help stop the spread of corrosion.
So I'm going to go back to so you hit two very important things there that honestly I'd never thought about. One is wood and the ability to transfer. I'm going to assume any type of insect in it, as well as like disease. Can, if not treated correctly, could some type of disease get embedded in the wood, or is it more insects and seeds?
Yeah, it's more insects and seeds. I don't think they're worried about the next coronavirus coming over in wood material. I think it's more, I guess you never know, right? Yeah, it's more
The
bugs.
first to have come up with that.
You never know.
All right. So then the other thing I had never contemplated is bare metal. So one of the things that Harbor Freight will do is actually treat that with a, you said a plastic uh, type of.
So, I mean, various forms. I mean, we're using a corrosion inhibitor, right? It's called VCI, and that just refers to any material that protects metal from corrosion, and that comes in various forms. So we will use liquid form, right? So we will,
Like,
based on the customer's requirements and needs, right? We have to make sure that we're within their spec, and we don't want to ruin. So we discuss this with them. Some will allow us to brush on an oil coating of this VCI on their bare metal, right? And then we can either do that alone or use that in conjunction with another type of VCI, which is usually a plastic wrap, a heat wrap. In this case, this water filtration plant that we're working on, it was a heat wrap. So it was a marine wrap like you'd see on the boats, only that was coated, the inside of that was coated with this chemical compound that will also help slow rust from forming.
so people will ship stuff because you said this company, you'd be shipping parts. I think you said to to somewhere in Europe, and literally that stuff is going to be sitting on the ground for a year before they start to use it.
Correct. Yeah, they wanted a lot of that had to do with tariffs and various other reasons, but they wanted to get it out
You
and get it in Sweden now. Yeah, yeah. So we're rushing to get it over there, even though they're not really ready for it yet. They want to get it there, and it will be stored outside for a year. Yes.
Wow. So what's the weirdest thing you've had to come up with custom packaging for or custom crating for?
I mean, I don't necessarily know if we've had anything weird here. It's just, been a lot of from small to large, a lot of pharmaceutical, like I said, a lot of capital equipment. I mean, I wish I had something interesting to tell you about weird. Um, Vehicles, we actually, it's been many, many years, I guess, but we had this really cool Ford. It was a car for the car show. We had to crate a car with a ramp that could be lowered so that they can pull the car in and out of. A multi-use crate. They wanted to use it over and over again, ship it all over the world. But off the top of my head, I can't think of anything really weird that we've created.
Well, we'll take a car. I've never, every time I've seen pictures of cars, they're always out, and I never think of them being crated.
This was a concept car. This was something that they want people to see it, and it was a very high value, one of a kind concept car.
So looking at the industry and without naming any names, what's the worst practices? Which we always talk about best practices, but what's I'm going to say the worst thing you've seen in other companies shipping?
Oh God, a lot. I'm going to be honest with you. from small to big. I mean, from like something so simple and minor as a shipper that ships bags, right? We have right now we have in our warehouse bags of a whey powder, right? So it's a white powder. It's in paper bags, and they're just laying on a pallet, and it's paper, right? They overhang the sides of the pallet. If you never know what a pallet, it's slats of wood. The paper kind of goes down in between with all the weight, and they, are amazed that maybe a bag gets nicked and one of their bags rips. And you look at them and you're going, well, how are you not putting cardboard, a thick cardboard layer down first on the pallet? How are you not using a pallet that's the right size so your bags don't overhang? Because if you try to go side by side and you rub against, one pallet to the next one, you're going to rip the whole side open. So simple things like that to a company that is shipping, multi-million-dollar crates internationally with almost no protection, a skid or a base that is flimsy. You go to lift it with a forklift, and it falls apart. Shippers don't put proper center of gravity marks. They don't put lifting marks. These are all the little things that you have to be aware of, so when we crate, we're thinking of handling. So we're making sure that a skid is solid enough to support the weight of the machinery, and then someone can lift it and move it, whether by forklift or crane. And we'll make those notes on the outside of the crate. We'll put where to lift from, whether by forklift or by crane, whether to use a spreader bar. We'll put where the center of gravity is. And this is all, most export packers do this, but that's what you have to think of when you're creating something. And we've seen a lot of cargo come in and out of this country that, believe it or not, has none of this information on it, not created for multiple handling. We'll receive freight to load on a flat rack, which is a container with no walls or roof for something that's too large that you have to strap it down, and you'll put the straps up over the top to loop back around. And as you tighten, the crate just starts to compress and fall apart because it has no strength. They'll make the crate with like picture frame crating versus like you're building a house, 2x4 studs, 16 on center to add that strength and, rigidity to the crate.
So I think you came up with the phrase that when Harbor Freight Transport looks at crating, packaging, you're looking at it you're looking at it from the point of view of how will the cargo be handled later, and that you're crating to that type of specification of, we want to make sure that this crating works for however it's going to be handled later on. Would that be true?
Absolutely. Yeah. How it's going to be handled later on for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What percentage of shippers don't do this?
I mean, that's a really good question. We do get a lot of really well-made crates in, but I'd probably say, 20%, 25% we've seen come in and it's not really well
That's 1 out of 4 in some cases.
packaged.
All right. So then, besides telling people, if I said to you, what would you want to tell people with respect to packaging and crating? Besides telling them to give you a call, because Harbor Freight Transport can help, and we know that.
That was going to be my first thing to say, but okay.
So I got you. I knew it would be. So Harbor Freight can help. What else would you tell somebody that is, let's say, shipping? They haven't been happy with their past shipping company. What would you tell them to look at besides give us a call as they're getting ready to ship their next shipment?
I would say try to use common sense and think about not just how to get it out of your facility if you're a shipper, right? Don't just think once it leaves your dock, it's not your problem anymore, or let someone else worry about it or handle it. But think about how it's going to be handled down the line. Really, and consult an expert, consult, if not us, someone, a freight forwarder that is well versed and familiar with handling, out of gauge or project cargo or machinery. Reach out to them and ask them questions about the whole process and where it's going to go, and understand where it's going to go. In this case, Sweden outside for a year. Think about the elements that's going to be. It's going to have to withstand for a full year, right? So think about your own machinery too.
Wow, I just heard you say that. Stephen Covey's "Begin with the End in Mind" just flashed in my head as you were talking about that. I need to make sure it's not I get it out my door. I need to worry about getting it out my door and how it's got to go through the shipping, as well as how long it's going to be there before they unpackage it. So if I've got products I'm shipping, I need to be thinking about where it's going and how long it's going to be sitting there, because it's got to be usable when they break it out of the shipping.
Exactly.
All right. Any other words of wisdoms here on shipping or crating that you want to impart on our listeners, viewers?
Besides, give us a call. That would be all, I think.
All right. What's the number they should give a call to?
It's probably best to email our rates department at rates@harborusa.com.
That's rates@harborusa.com. We've been talking with Steve Liberty Jr. Steve, any last words you want to say before I say goodbye?
No, that's all.
All right, folks. We'll see you again soon in another episode of Harbor Freight Transport Can Help. Thanks, and have a great week. Happy shipping.